Everyone. My name is John Mursky. I'm chair of the Energy Commission, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. So I will read some introductory remarks. First, welcome to the meeting. Welcome to the February 9th, 2021 electronic meeting of the Energy Commission. This virtual meeting is to affect social distancing and to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We will conduct this meeting similar to in-person meetings. Commissioners, please remain on camera just as you would be visible during in-person meetings. Also mute your microphone when not speaking. Public comments will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call one of the following toll-free numbers: 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter the meeting ID 913-5783-4507. These numbers will remain the same for the entire year for Energy Commission meetings. This information, along with two local dial-in numbers, is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website, on the broadcast of the meeting on CTN, channel 16, and AT&T channel 99, and finally online at www.a2gov.org/watch-CTN. So, Missy, would you kick off the meat of the meeting with the land acknowledgement?
Absolutely, Chair Mursky. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained generally in unconscionable ways from Indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals.
Thank you, Missy. So would you next lead the roll call?
Absolutely. Can I have 1 second to make sure we don't have any commissioners in the queue?
Okay.
Here. Yes, we do. So let me just promote them here. Okay, and I have a fear Chuck is on his phone, as I know he's had some technical difficulties. So if that's the case, Chuck, please feel free to raise your hand and I can promote you. Here we go. Commissioner Hookham. Commissioner McComber. Commissioner Schreiber.
Here, and by the way, Bridget said she was having trouble getting in. Commissioner.
Is she? Okay, great.
She's
I'll take that. I'll take that offline. Thank you for that. Commissioner Clevey.
Here.
Leave here.
Missy, you froze on us for a second.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Great. Commissioner or Chair Mursky.
Here.
Vice Chair Colvin Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Briggs. Councilmember Radina.
Here.
Commissioner Zucker.
Here.
Commissioner Hatcher.
I am here.
Commissioner McCoy.
Here.
Commissioner George.
Here.
Commissioner Singleton.
Here.
Commissioner Garber.
Here.
Commissioner Mursky, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. So next point on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Mr. George, thank you. Second, anyone?
Second.
Second, Commissioner McCoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Next is approval of the minutes. And I'd just like to call everyone's attention or remind them that the minutes can be found on the calendar for the previous meeting. So if you look at this meeting, you won't see them, but if you look at the previous meeting, you will find them there. And I'm wondering if I can get a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one's opposed. Passes unanimously. By the way, I looked at the minutes. Missy, to you and your staff, you did a good job. Thanks. So this is now an opportunity for public input. So people have an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you are watching on CTN, please call the numbers that I mentioned before. I'll read them again. 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 913-5783-4502. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and the video feed. City staff will select callers that have their hand raised one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automatic message announcing that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. So I just got a text, Missy, from Bridget. Let's see, what does she say? She's tried multiple times to get into the meeting. I can see her and hear everyone, but no one can see or hear me.
I think I sent her an email, and Commissioner McComber, if you can hear this, if you're listed, you might be our Ecology Center guest. Can you just respond and tell me if that's you or change your name so I can move you over?
Thank you.
I'll take that offline. And Chair Mirsky, we do have a number of folks ready for comment. I'm going to ask phone number last 3 digits 445 to talk, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Hello?
Hello,
We
we
hear
can hear
you.
Okay. So my name is Virginia. My address is 4818 Hillway Court in Ann Arbor, and I'm a student here, and I'm here to demand that this city transition to a public power utility and municipalize its energy. The benefits of municipalization are endless, whether it's reliability, more affordable costs, or giving back to the community. Public power utilities far outpace private ones in sustainability and convenience. They are not for profit, are community owned, and support strong local economies. But something that I particularly like to emphasize is that municipalization reduces carbon emissions. Between 2005 and 2017, public power utilities reduced carbon dioxide emissions by 33%. In light of the A20 plan being put in place, we as a city have set a goal to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030 to address the increasing threat of the climate crisis. One of the most integral aspects of this plan is to, quote, power our electrical grid with 100% renewable energy, end quote. And yet, instead of a public power utility that will move us towards that goal, the energy in Ann Arbor has been monopolized by DTE. This raises many concerns. For one, the DTE is a dirty fossil fuel provider. As of December 31st, 2019, 59% of DTE's energy came from burning coal, compared to the average utility that only uses 23.4% coal. And to put this into even more perspective, only 7% of DTE's energy came from wind and solar power. If we want a livable planet And to achieve what the 820 plan has laid out, we need to increase our usage of renewable energy and cut down our usage of fossil fuel. Maintaining DTE's monopoly is not going to achieve that. Municipalization is essential to promoting energy and democracy across Michigan and crucial to help us combat the climate crisis. Other proposals to reduce emissions, such as the community choice aggregation, require a lengthy legal process which is not only inconvenient, but also still reliant on DTE. With a municipal utility, we don't need to rely on DTE's dirty fossil fuel power. We can create our own renewable energy here in Ann Arbor. For my entire life, I've seen climate change devastate communities. I'd like to raise the fact that millions of young people's lives and futures are on the line. The future of our planet is on the line. Municipalization will be the first step in transitioning towards an equitable, just, clean future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Missy, I think you said we had a couple of people.
We do. Next, caller with the last three digits, 998. You can unmute.
Caller with the last three digits, 998. You can unmute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Zachariah Farah, and I'm a student at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and I'm a resident on South Division Street. You may have received a resolution that came from the student government at the University of Michigan, and I was one of the sponsors of that resolution. And I'm calling also to talk about municipalization because I feel very strongly that this is a great idea for Ann Arbor and that it deserves a complete investigation to see if this is a feasible idea for our community. I know that growing up as a young person, as the previous speaker said, is a really scary thing these days. I have laid awake at night before just thinking about what I'm going to do as I grow older with the climate crisis looming. You know, some of my best experiences with my family, I'm just remembering from earlier this year, I was watching the Planet Earth documentary series, and instead of being really proud about how we're protecting our environment, I was just horribly depressed about how we're destroying it. We know that we have 10 years left, according to the IPCC and the United Nations. And right now, as we get energy from DTE, we are not pursuing that timeline because DTE wants to transition to renewable energies by 2050. That's 30 years from now. And we know we don't have 30 years, we have 10 years. So not only is DTE not working on the timeline that we need, but we have no control over that whatsoever. With the municipal utility, we would have that control. I, as a resident, would have my voice heard finally. As the previous speaker also stated, 60% of the energy that comes through when you flip that light switch comes from the burning of coal. That is wholly unacceptable in 2021. 60%, that's far too high of a number. And you know, as I said, I'm a student at U of M. I studied abroad last year in Germany. In Germany, that percentage of coal is much lower. And then the percentage of renewables that they use in those communities is very, very high. It's over 30% in some areas. DTE uses only 7% renewables. So once again, we are lagging very far behind other countries that are comparable to our own. This is why I strongly support the idea of municipalization. And I think that the Energy Commission should fully explore going about this legal process, which is outlined in the Michigan Constitution. The idea of CCA is very exciting to me as well. However, throughout my entire lifespan, there has just been very little movement in Lansing, and I think that relying on movement there would be a very foolhardy plan. Because if we're not able to get CCA passed, an entire section of the 8-0 plan will just fail. So at least exploring other options and having a backup plan for if CCA is not passed, I think is a terrific idea. It's a very prudent strategy as we continue forward in accomplishing the 8-0 plan. After all, the 8-0 plan is a living, breathing document So even
20
though
seconds.
municipalization isn't part of that right now, it can be. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you for your comments. Missy?
Yes.
Anyone else?
We have phone number ending in 820.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Phil Bianco. I am a resident of Ann Arbor in Ward 1. I've lived here and worked here for about 8 years now. And I'm calling also to speak in favor of energy municipalization or public ownership of the energy utility in Ann Arbor. I think the people who spoke before me made some very good points about why it makes sense financially and in terms of ecology as well and sustainability. I think it makes sense to do this both to advance affordability and reliability of our energy here in Ann Arbor, and also to make sure that voters and citizens and people in this city have control over our energy utility. And I think it's one of the best things that we could do to invest in our community and potentially create a lot of good, well-paying union jobs as well. I think that, yeah, so I just wanted to speak in favor of energy municipalization. I think Ann Arbor is very well positioned to lead on this issue in a way that a lot of municipalities and a lot of larger entities as well are not able to do. And I think perhaps more importantly, if we are going to solve the climate crisis and really make a dent in that locally, I think we have to take power away from polluters like DTE, which have a financial interest in doing the opposite of the things that we need to do to solve the climate crisis. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I really hope that the commission seriously considers and does recommend a feasibility study for municipalization in Ann Arbor. Thanks.
Thank you for calling in and thanks for your input. Missy, do we have some more people?
We do. We have a handful more. And I believe that I accidentally lowered their hand for them. So if I did that, please know it was not advertent. Please raise your hand again and we'll put you back in the queue. So caller ending in 283. You should now be unmuted.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Cooley. I'm an Ann Arbor resident. I live on 731 Packard, and I've been an Ann Arbor renter for 2 years now. I am here, like previous speakers, to express my opinion regarding the municipalization of Ann Arbor and its diversion from DTE Energy. For nearly a year now, we all have been forced to reconsider the role that the air plays in all of our lives. The air, which most of us take for granted, we now realize has the possibility to spread things like COVID-19 in our communities. Of course, we have all generally realized this before, but now these days we are really forced to pay direct attention to the air in which we breathe. This is quite a new thing for most of us. However, for people like me, I've been thinking about the air for a little bit longer. A few years ago, we realized that I had asthma. And since then, I've known what it feels like to live for days and days on end, feeling like I was breathing my last gasp of air at every moment. It's honestly a really terrible feeling, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone else. Your chest constricts, and you're really unable to focus on the most basic things in your day-to-day life. It's an awful experience. I know what it's like to live in polluted air. I know what that feels like. I also know that if we don't commit to cutting ties with corporations like DTE that care more about shareholder profit than my lungs, the air will get worse. As previous speakers have stated, around 60% of DTE's power is sourced from coal, as opposed to just 7% from wind and solar. DTE will never be motivated to care about our community's health or the quality of the air we breathe as a corporate entity. Ann Arbor needs to cut DTE out of the picture so that our future and our air doesn't feel like my present reality. I ask you to commit to cleaner air and healthier communities. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Missy, sounds like we have a few more.
We do. Caller ending in 920.
920.
Can you guys hear me now? I'm so sorry about that.
That's all right. Yes, we hear you fine. Thanks.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Sam Limerick. I live in Ward 3 near Packard and Hill, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Michigan. I'm, like everyone else, I'm speaking in support of the city taking steps to critically reevaluate the living carbon neutrality plan as embodied in 820. The 820 plan, as it currently stands, relies wholly upon community choice aggregation, as we've already heard, as a way to decarbonizing our local electrical grid by 2030. I think that a continuing partnership with DTE, whose timeline for carbon neutrality is 2050, and a singular reliance upon CCA, which faces significant hurdles in Lansing to decarbonize our grid, is fundamentally at odds with our stated goals as a community. And I think that a publicly owned electric utility and consequently local control of our energy mix is in our reach today, unlike CCA. Municipalization has a strong legal footing in the state and in Ann Arbor City Code, and I think that we should join the crew. More than 40 Michigan communities, like Lansing actually, and our next door neighbors in Chelsea, already enjoy the benefits of a municipal utility. I'm going to use my hometown of Austin as an illustrative example to describe what I think would be some of the benefits of a municipal utility. I'll highlight three tangible benefits: renewables mix, cost, and resiliency and community health that Austin has seen, and then try to connect them to our situation. So, I mean, as of June 2019, Austin Energy's generation mix was at 43% renewable energy, and this is deep in the heart of Texas, where things are like Texas. And Austin Energy invested heavily in this renewables mix in direct response to climate protection resolutions passed by the city in 2007 and 2014. And that, to me, that's what local control is all about. It's about listening to constituents and hearing that they want a renewable energy mix, which I know we all want in this room. And then let's move to cost. DTE's residential electric rate is 17.51 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's 32% higher than the U.S. average. And it's actually 42% more than what our neighbors in Chelsea are paying to their municipal utility, who they pay 10.7 cents per kilowatt hour. Like, what's the deal with that? Where's that extra money going? And taking it back to Austin, I mean, they beat the Texas state average on costs, and they did this while soundly beating us up here in Ann Arbor with respect to the degree of local control over renewables mix. We'll hear some more stories from other communities that have seen tremendous cost savings from municipalization in a presentation you'll see later on. And I'll just take it back to community health and resiliency now. In a year where utility bills have become particularly burdensome, a public utility will allow us to live our values and not shut off people's power in a warming, but still in some parts of the year, sometimes very cold world like today. Empathetic moves like this are a great example of the way a public utility could grow our community's resiliency, our collective ability to weather the storm of climate change and a global pandemic. And I pose the question to the commission and all listening: does resiliency or regard for community health drive DTE's operations today? Would they invest in company time or energy in this space? Are they keen on facilitating the transformative change we know our energy system must undergo? Their stated carbon neutrality goal of 2050 contravenes this. So let's step into the leadership role we all know Ann Arbor can step into on the issues of sustainability and think about creating a municipal utility. Thank you all for your time.
And thank you for your insights. Missy.
Caller ending in 533.
We should hear you now. 533.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Roshan. I am a graduate student at the University of Michigan and an Ann Arbor resident right here on Dewey Avenue. And I would like to echo everyone who has spoken before me. There's obviously a strong case to be made for a municipal utility purely on climate grounds. We've heard plenty about that, but I also want to emphasize how impactful a municipal utility could be for energy justice. So energy affordability has always been a justice issue. We know that lower income people pay extremely high proportions of their income on utility bills, but the pandemic has sort of thrown this into extremely stark relief. Last year, I worked for several months with a mutual aid collective serving Washtenaw County. We were mostly just focused on redistributing cash money to help people meet their basic needs. I worked their finances, so I saw every transaction over a period of several months, and it was DTE bill after DTE bill after DTE bill. It was frankly a little bit shocking, and I'm someone who's worked in energy and energy justice for a minute now. People are struggling. We're currently on the brink of a utility ratepayer debt crisis. The National Energy Assistance Directors Association estimates that there could be as much as 40 billion with a B in utility debt owed nationwide by March. By pursuing a municipal utility, not only will we achieve lower electric rates, which will relieve some of that immediate burden on people in the first place, but we can democratize solutions to debt relief and shut off moratoria. For example, in Lansing, the public utility there has declared a shut-off moratorium that extends past the moratoria that have been declared by the investor-owned utilities in terms of duration, but also in terms of reach. The moratoria declared by the investor-owned utilities, such as DCE, is very limited in terms of age and income, whereas these utility moratoria declared, or shut-off moratoria declared by the public utilities are universal. Municipal utilities can also efficiently deliver state and federal funding in order to help ratepayers, as we've seen in Lansing and in Los Angeles, which have delivered CARES Act aid directly to ratepayers to help pay their bills. Energy is a human right. We need it to survive. Municipalization is a step towards realizing that right for everyone. Thank you.
And thank you.
Next up, we have caller at last three digits 772.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Hi. My name is Rowan Tucker-Meyer. I'm a high school student. I live on Shadford Road, and I strongly urge you all to support public power and make a plan to municipalize Ann Arbor's energy. I completely agree with everyone who's spoken before me. I think if the Energy Commission is serious about bringing Ann Arbor into the 21st century and fulfilling the goals which were set out by the A20 plan, then you have to start working towards energy municipalization. It's hard to see how we could possibly transition off of fossil fuels when we are basically at the mercy of whatever DTE chooses to invest in, which is to say, whatever will deliver the most profit to their shareholders, rather than what is actually best for our community and our planet. Now, a public power utility, on the other hand, would be accountable to the citizens of Ann Arbor, so we'd have more input regarding where our energy comes from. And I think major structural changes like this would be immensely important in our fight against catastrophic climate change. So I'm so glad to see that the Energy Commission is looking into it. So I hope you do everything that you can to make Ann Arbor's power public. Thank you.
And thank you. How are we doing, Missy?
We have a few more.
Okay, good.
All right. Let's see. Next up, we have caller ending in 055.
Caller 055, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
We do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Evan Redmond. I'm a Ward 3 resident and a former candidate for Ann Arbor City Council, and I am also calling in on behalf of the exploration of creating a municipal energy utility. The number one reason for municipalization is that it's the fastest legal way to 100% renewable energy. DTE lagged behind and to be carbon neutral by 2035, and very far behind Ann Arbor's plan to be carbon neutral by 2030. And there are lots of other callers that have already talked about why it is a good moral position to municipalize, but it's also in the city's long-term economic interest to acquire a municipal energy utility. If you'll indulge me, in economics, there are two main types of costs. There's fixed costs, which are costs that are constant regardless of how much is produced. And there are marginal costs, which are the costs per unit produced. So for example, the cost of building an auto parts factory is a fixed cost, and the cost of materials and labor that go into each part is the marginal cost. So say hypothetically that DTE tomorrow massively shifts and does a 180 and promises 100% renewable energy by 2030 instead of its current goal for sometime after 2050. In this case, the fixed cost would be the creation of windmills, hydroelectric dams, and because these resources are renewable, the only marginal cost would be the occasional labor of maintenance. So once the fixed cost is paid off, it's free electricity for everybody, right? No, of course not. DTE is a for-profit, publicly traded company who has a responsibility to generate value for its shareholders. And that money comes out of our community members' pockets. If we let DTE continue down this path, they'll essentially be selling Ann Arbor something that is free for them to produce. The upfront investment needed to form a municipal utility would pay off in the long run by both doing our part to avoid the worst effects of climate catastrophe, but also ensuring our community has very low-cost renewable energy that they control for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have caller 947.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Great. Hello and good evening. My name is Eric Williams, and I'm an Ann Arbor resident and a student at the University of Michigan. I'm also calling in today to voice my support for the municipalization of the Ann Arbor electricity utility. Over the years, as I've continued to expand my understanding of climate science and the climate crisis we currently face, I found that it's pretty easy to become kind of disheartened and overwhelmed by the many obstacles that we as kind of a nation and global community must overcome to ensure a brighter future for our world. Especially true when thinking about kind of politics at the state and national level, where I often feel there's very little as an individual can do to help guide the United States to a more sustainable future. But I think municipalization would help to change that entirely, giving Ann Arbor residents such as myself the ability to choose green and sustainable energy sources, an option we really lack with DTE. And the very reason behind this overwhelming climate crisis is in very large part due to the actions of energy companies, especially those who utilize vast quantities of fossil fuels. DTE is easily one of the worst offenders in this regard, with 59% of their energy coming from burning coal, well above the national average of 23%. Consequently, it's evident that DTE does not truly care for the future of Ann Arbor residents or the long-term health and well-being of our planet as a whole, else they surely would have already begun a more meaningful transition to renewables. Municipalization of the Ann Arbor electricity grid would give ordinary residents like myself the power to choose what kind of future we want for ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and every future generation to come. And I think it's this idea. It's especially telling that so many young folks have called in today. We are very concerned about our future. My DTE energy bill was due just today, and I absolutely hated having to fund the destruction of our planet through the burning of coal and fossil fuels, especially as DTE continues to use its money to invest in natural gas and oil pipelines right here in Michigan. This is especially frustrating, even more so considering how much more we are paying for this dirty energy blend from DTE than we could be paying from a public utility. This climate crisis is urgent, and we absolutely cannot wait for DTE to change, as it really exclusively serves the interest of its shareholders, not the people of Ann Arbor. As a passionate and concerned resident of Ann Arbor, I implore you all to consider municipalization, and in doing so, help to ensure a better future for our community. Thank you for your time.
And we thank you.
Next up, we have caller last number or digits 340.
Good evening, members of the Energy Commission and my fellow Ann Arborites. My name is Dr. Lauren Sargent. I have been an Ann Arbor resident for close to 40 years, and I'm speaking tonight in very strong support of a municipal utility. Way back when I was in college, I was a member of the Clamshell Alliance. And in 1978, our call was energy, democracy, and public power, democratically controlled and decentralized renewable energy. Does that sound familiar? I cannot believe that in 2021, my college kids are staring down catastrophic climate change and we still don't have it. Public power, that is. But here in Ann Arbor, we do have the power to make it happen. We can form a municipal utility. The Michigan Constitution and our own city charter provide for it. While theoretically compatible with options like community choice aggregation for sourcing renewables, CCA requires the support of the Michigan legislature. Have you met the Michigan legislature recently? We don't have 2 years or 4 years or 6 years to hope for a legislature that will come around to our point of view. And we simply don't have time. We do have a commitment here in Ann Arbor to the A20 plan with goals of 100% renewable energy. We also have a proud tradition of taking on long-term responsibilities to improve our own community and contribute to the greater good, even when other entities with more power and more money refuse to do so. That is exactly the position that we're in right now. Earth Day, Ecology Center, Recycle Ann Arbor, Greenbelt, affordable housing villages, AAPS sustainability bond, and most recently the A20 plan. We cannot put all our eggs in baskets that we do not control, but fortunately we can own our own basket, a municipal utility, run by us, in line with our climate goals, accountable to the citizens, and not shareholder value as DTE is and must be. If not us, who? If not now, when? Right now, DTE is laying gas pipe in our city, under our streets. They're not putting down geothermal. They're also installing a gas plant on U of M's campus. Not geothermal, not solar, not wind. The writing is on the wall. It's very clear. We have a choice to make. We have the power to do it. Let's do it. Thank you.
Next up, we have caller ending in 661.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gus Teske. I'm a resident of Ward 5 for over 20 years. I live at 313 Montgomery. I'm a member of Ann Arbor Indivisible. We're a local chapter of the National Indivisible Organization, and we're focused on helping to counter threats to our future. You know, threats like Donald Trump and climate breakdown. And we voted recently to support exploring municipal solar and wind power because we see that as the best route to zero carbon emission for Ann Arbor's power generation. We don't see community choice aggregation as likely to deliver clean power that we need by 2030, as part of the A20 plan. We know CCA is currently illegal. We know we have to overcome opposition from at least DTE, Consumers Power, and the Republicans, and maybe more. But I want to focus on Biden administration's goal of carbon-free electricity by 2035. I suspect everyone is aware of that. And of course, DTE wants to burn coal until 2040, which is a huge problem for all of us. And who knows how long DTE might burn gas. And so what if Biden shuts down DTE's plants in 2035? Their fossil fuel burning plants. Are Ann Arbor ratepayers like me going to have to pay for these plants, or will DTE go into bankruptcy? I'm a little concerned about this. Ann Arbor Indivisible supports exploring municipal power now, and we will act to support that. We will follow the Energy Commission's progress. We urge the Energy Commission to explore municipal power and do a feasibility study quickly. we don't think we have to go along with such obviously bad decisions and bad planning and the high degree of uncertainty that DTE is showing us. Transitioning to municipal solar and wind is what we need to do, and we hope you will take serious steps. Thank you very much.
And thank you.
A caller with last digits 152, and apologies if they already went. That is totally possible at this point, but 152.
Can the commission hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, 152. Now you should be good.
Yes, we hear you.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Jeff Irwin. I am coming to you from my Zoom bunker at 2542 Bellwood on the southeast side. And I just want to thank you for volunteering tonight and being a part of this commission. I especially having to go through these long meetings. It's an important service. So I want to thank you for that. And I also want to let you know that as your employee in Lansing, as your state senator, I'm always happy to come back and talk more about some of these issues. I work a lot on energy issues, and I love what you guys are pushing from the Energy Commission. I'd love to come back and talk to you about CCA and distributed generation and everything else. But I did want to come tonight to let you know that I'm really excited about this conversation around municipalization. When I look around the state of Michigan, at the communities that have municipalized, I see two consistent themes. One is that their power is cheaper, and two is that their power is greener. And I know that I want cheaper and greener power, and I believe that people in Ann Arbor want cheaper and greener power. We probably all want that. And so I just want to encourage you to support a thorough feasibility study, because this idea of municipalizing our power here in Ann Arbor is a big, huge, and expensive endeavor. But the only thing that's more expensive than doing this is not doing it. And so I encourage you to walk this path, to characterize this opportunity, because I think that if we do the hard work to characterize the opportunity, we'll find that we can have cheaper, greener power and serve our goals better. So thank you for your service, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have caller 134.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Stultz and Chair Mirsky. Ken Garber, 28 Haverhill Court. I agree with the previous callers, and they're tough acts to follow. And my guess is that several commissioners would also seriously consider a muni for Ann Arbor. But one place is on everyone's mind, Boulder, Colorado. That city spent $27 million over 10 years on its muni effort with little to show for it. No, we don't want to repeat that experience. But what happened in Boulder is not what will happen here. First, let's look at Boulder. In 2011, it amended its city charter to authorize a muni. The charter language required that muni electric rates be no higher than those of Xcel, the local private utility, at the time of transfer, and those rates had to cover costs plus 125% of debt service. In 2014, when Boulder formed its muni, Xcel sued on the grounds that Boulder could not meet those charter conditions. 5 years of litigation later, the city settled with Xcel, dissolving the muni. That's Boulder. Okay, what about Ann Arbor? Our charter already authorizes a muni, and without Boulder's rate limit or revenue mandate. DTE certainly will sue, but not based on that. Rather, it will claim a local franchise under the Foot Act, a 1905 Michigan law that grants private utilities a perpetual franchise if they had one at that time. DTE has claimed that an 1895 city contract with Michigan Electric Company to power 161 Ann Arbor streetlights is that franchise agreement. So under the Foot Act, DTE will argue we cannot take its assets. That'll be its lawsuit, completely different than the Boulder case. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I see an opportunity here. Yes, 20th century courts have upheld Foot Act franchises repeatedly. But the 1963 Michigan Constitution says that no franchise can be longer than 30 years. DTE's so-called franchise here is almost 130 years old. To my knowledge, the Foot Act has never been tested in court against the 30-year franchise limit, which became effective in 1993. If DTE invokes the Foot Act, which it will, and we win, which we could, we not only get our muni, but we nullify all of DTE's Foot Act franchises. There are dozens of these probably. Only DTE knows how many. Suddenly all these cities and townships are open to competition, and DTE will have to negotiate franchise agreements with all of them or lose these markets. cities can get franchise fees from DTE and can also negotiate for clean power. So as I see it, our Ann Arbor Muni could unlock competition for electric power through much of the state. Thanks.
And we thank you.
And we have our last caller, Representative Robbie.
Everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on today. I'm coming to you from the state capitol, actually. Thanks for all the work that you do. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm just calling in to agree with all the previous callers and our state senator. I have, for many years, been a very strong supporter of municipalization, and I do believe that it is the most cost-effective, and also one thing that hasn't really been mentioned is it is the most reliable form of ownership for power. If you look at utilities across the state and the speed at which they get blackouts recovered, it is much better in municipal utilities. Public ownership matters. It matters for cost of power. Again, I'm in Lansing right now. The lights that are on today for me are provided by public power. And one of the comments that I just made is around the issue of home solar. DTE is fighting home solar, tooth and nail. They have a 1% cap. They want to kill home solar in the state of Michigan. In contrast, the Lansing Board of Power and Light is providing incentives. They're telling their citizens, we will give you $500 a kilowatt hour up to $2,000 if you install solar on your homes. The contrast, it could not be clearer between what we can achieve when we work together through a public utility versus what DTE has created in terms of its investor-owned monopoly and its for-profit driven business model, which will not place clean energy at the forefront. It will not place social justice and equity at the forefront. We, the people, can stand up and own our own power and place all of those things at a much higher level. Thank you for your consideration of this issue and for hearing me today.
First, we have one more caller ending in 519.
Hi, this is Rita Mitchell, and I am a long-term resident of Ann Arbor. I live at 621 Fifth Street. I support community municipal power because it will allow local control of the types of energy sources. It will provide local jobs, local accountability, and transparency. As an additional benefit, we can make it support our goals to spare trees of radical trimming, which is an additional environmental benefit. We can integrate the services with current city utilities and work for efficiency. We can set the rates. In situations like those presented by the COVID-19 pandemic, we, as members of the community, can make decisions that help assure that all have access to the energy services that they need. Lastly, our power decisions can be made in a way to support environmental justice. That is, our due diligence with the implementation can assure us as owners and users that our energy production will not have unintended negative consequences of polluting the air, water, and earth locally and for others in our region and state. I urge you to proceed as you've heard from so many speakers that have wonderful information and wonderful goals. Please, let's look at it if this is the time. Thank you.
Caller ending in 519.
That was 519, right, Missy?
Yeah, 519 actually. Miss Mitchell jumped the queue, which is delightful. 519.
Caller 519.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Hi, my name's Ian Mark. I'm a resident of Ann Arbor. My address is 1811 Independence Boulevard. I am calling in also in support, actually full support of energy utility municipalization. I think it's awesome that the conversation is happening. Hard for me to follow up on all the previous callers as I agree with all of them. I think they've done an exceptional job of covering why it is important in terms of addressing the climate crisis. I think this could be an incredible step for not only Ann Arbor, but also a tipping point for the state and similar efforts across the country in aggressively and rapidly decarbonizing our energy network. I think the time has passed for any half measures or wasted time on addressing this crisis. The planet itself is at stake, and Ann Arbor could play a key role in taking local action on climate change. But another point I wanted to bring up was reliability, which I appreciate an earlier comment on. But I very vividly remember a little over 2 years ago when DTE contacted all of their customers, telling them to please set their thermostats no higher than 65 in the middle of January, when we were getting record temperatures of, I believe, -26 in Detroit, which personally I found infuriating. People could have died if their grid had gone down and people had lost power. I mean, what exactly are we paying a premium for if we can't count on our power when we need it most? And if it's going towards, you know, as someone said previously, 59% of their power going to burning coal and polluting our environment. I personally find that very, very frustrating. And I think it really underscores the importance of taking democratic control of our energy grid. So I really appreciate you giving me the time to speak and hearing my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Thanks. How's our queue looking, Missy?
It is cleared.
So I want to thank all of the callers for your engagement and for sharing your views with us. I don't know if we, what I'm going to do is just move on to the next agenda item and allow commissioners then to comment on the presentation as well as on callers' comments, all at the same time at the end of the presentation, if that's okay with everybody. Very good. I see some nodding heads. I also want to call everyone's attention to the fact that Council Member Briggs joined us several minutes ago, and she informed me via text that she was listening in much earlier than she appeared on our screen. So we thank her for joining us as well. So next on the agenda is the energy report.
I'll go really fast for folks as kind of an update. We are moving forward beautifully with the Aging in Place Efficiently program. We've brought on our 2 part-time contractors that are phenomenal. So you will be seeing some material very soon. Also, our 10,000 Trees initiative, we met with nurseries recently and we'll be unveiling our first bulk buy program, which mirrors the Solarize program here shortly. We're using local nurseries, obviously climate smart trees, and the co-benefits are profusive in that space. So really excited for that. Last week, we formally kicked off the public comment period on the energy benchmarking and transparency work for commercial and multifamily infrastructure. So if you would like, you can read that. It's on our website. There's a short video that gives you an overview of the draft ordinance, which was formed with the task force. And then there's also a link to insert public comment. So please do take a look. We also re-energized the time of marketing work. So there's a small group of us who are, that was pretty close to the finish line. We're just bringing it back, and the intent is to bring the benchmarking with time of marketing forward, which for those who may not know and are listening, that is about energy use disclosure for single family homes. So we would have pretty much the majority of the built infrastructure disclosing energy use transparently at the same time. We had our first Solarize event. I think we might have had our first 2 Solarize events. I think we had our last one this following weekend, but those are going swimmingly well, just like last year, gung-ho in terms of distributed generation rooftop. If you're interested, or you know people who are interested, please have them go to our website and sign up for events. We are also starting to look at organizations that want to host a Solarize event. So normally it's been neighbor to neighbor, but if your organization, for example, the Sierra Club is interested, we're exploring possibly doing something with them for their membership. So let us know if you're interested in that. On Tuesday night, Council will receive the energy criteria and principles that the Commission adopted for formal consideration. So we'll see, that would be for formal adoption. We continue to move aggressively forward on the city's energy strategy, which mirrors A20 and goes really deep into the actions that we'll be taking, as well as contingencies. I know a few public speakers talked about that. I assure you, your staff are planning many, many contingencies for the strategies in A20. So that is moving forward. And then did want to share, we're launching an equitable engagement process with others throughout the city to really work with frontline and fence line communities to understand how they define equity and what equitable engagement means to them. as opposed to what we might think that it means from candidly my place of privilege. So we'll be working with them and then using that input to inform a lot of the decision making that OSI does. Last night we kicked off the budget. Here we go. It'll be a great ride. You can catch us in the budget presentations in the last 6 minutes of the budget. And our council members did a fabulous job bearing a lot of information. And the last thing I'll put forward is we're standing up some Earth Day activities. They will be virtual this year. There's a lot of coordination that's happening. But again, if you or any of your partner organizations or home organizations are interested in joining us, we'd really like to have a strong stance with heavy youth leadership around Earth Day this year. Rapid fire. Back over to you, Chair.
Yes. News from commissioners. Ember, I saw you raise your hand.
Well, I just had a quick question for Missy. I was wondering if for the energy market at the time of ordinance, if that's still planning to come forward with the rental and the commercial piece, or if we're just moving forward with the single family home one.
They're all going to come, but they might stagger a little bit in terms of process. So getting them to legal, for example, will stagger just so one can move before the other. But the intent is actually, though, to bring them to council as a full suite.
Great, thank you.
Other commissioners, news from commissioners. Mark, do you want to give a quick plug on the GLREA series that you've initiated, which is on, I think, policy issues too, which fits with a lot of the comments tonight?
Yeah, the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association is launching a new seminar series that will happen once a month. We're lining up speakers. Chuck is going to be the speaker in March, thank goodness, and represent a version of the presentation he did at the Energy Commission last week, or last time we met. We're kicking off the session this Thursday, and we're going to have a policy presentation that's basically talking about how what happens in the intervention process. So the organizations that are involved in rate cases against utilities, it seems like it's sort of a black hole, but utilities have to get permission from the Public Service Commission, supported by the legislature and the governor, of course, which covers their rate cases, and organizations can intervene against them. Ann Arbor has intervened. Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association is a regular intervener, et cetera. So we're going to try and unpack that onion and explain it in easy terms so people in the solar community can understand what's involved in going against the utilities on rate cases and those kinds of things. We'll also be having, these are going to happen once a month. They're booked right now almost through the year. Missy's going to give a presentation on community choice aggregation later this year, and we're going to be showcasing Ann Arbor's solar program with Julie as an example for other communities. And I don't know if other people know that Ann Arbor's preparing a handbook, so the Solarize Ann Arbor program could be replicated in other communities, and I think that's an outstanding model. We'll be doing one on municipalization and working with a number of municipals that are doing green power and how they do it, and how those that don't self-generate, like Chelsea, how do they do green power? Here's the inside story. They don't. They send a big check to DTE every year and buy green power from DTE. But so yes, so if anybody's interested, if you're part of GLREA, you're already getting the notices. Anyone who hasn't got the notice has sent me, I guess I can send it to Josh, and he can release it out to the Energy Commission for anybody who's interested in participating and joining in on those sessions. Again, it'll be at 7 o'clock this coming Thursday, and then it'll be the second Thursday of the month going forward. Thank you, John, for the opportunity.
Yeah, sure. And I think if you go to the GLREA, Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association site, then you can find more information there too. Other commissioners? Very good, silence is golden. So we will move on to our first main point on the agenda, which is a presentation from the group Ann Arbor Public Power. And I think we have a caller that's going to step in and make that presentation, correct, Missy?
Commissioner Murski, we actually rejiggered the agenda, which is fine. We can go to the presentation, but I think it's really important to kind of set the stage for
Yes.
the work that's coming forward.
Please.
We'll get to that, I guess, after. We'll keep it. But what we want to express is that thanks to the hard work of all of you, and the chair and the vice chair, we've identified a year of learning around different energy options that we're going to go through. And so we'll talk about that later on the agenda. We've identified lots of topics. We kind of listened to previous meetings where people were talking about different techniques, different technologies, different policy frameworks. And so we want to start today, and the conversation with A2P2 will start that conversation. We will go through a year, though, of exploration. And next month, we've already locked in the city's energy attorney to come and talk about the legal landscape. You heard some references to the Foot Act. She's going to come and talk about that and what's actually been legislated and what's possible and not, more factual as opposed to advocating for one approach or another. So this year worth of learning is also going to inform the energy educational series that we're trying to create for our residents. So we're excited to go on this journey with you. From staff's perspective, tonight's presentation is the kickoff of that journey about learning about different approaches to the energy system. So with that, give me a second to move over the folks that will be presenting.
Question before you go on, for Missy. Does that mean that things that could move faster, for example, there is legislation on community choice aggregation stuff going on, so we don't have to wait for a year to engage with that, I hope.
No, we're going to try, we'll talk about that in the session, how to sequence the content. There are some things where I think they're more learning. There are some things where staff very clearly need and want support from the commission on. And so we'll try to sequence things in a way that, sorry, I'm looking to move people over. Don't think I'm ignoring you in any way. Looking to sequence things appropriately so that we can get the feedback in a timely manner. And then for things that aren't as clear, move forward. So again, we view this as a learning opportunity, and staff will not be presenting any resolutions to you unless it's something that we need support on. Okay, so I think I have everyone moved over except for maybe Zach, and I don't see him on the line.
I think he's not going to be able to join, so it should be whoever you have.
Great. Do you need me to advance your slides, or do you have them? Okay.
I will need you to enable me to share screen.
I'm not confident I can do that, Greg. Hold on. Greg, I'm not going to be able to do that. This is not my Zoom account, so I can't, but let me download your slides from what we got earlier. So why don't you introduce yourself while I do that?
Yeah.
Thanks. First of all, I just want to thank everybody who already gave comment for the amazing breadth and depth of knowledge that was brought forward and their commitment to a just future. The people calling into this meeting to make public comment demonstrate why public power is an amazing opportunity for our community. And we're also very excited that this is apparently the kickoff in an ongoing educational series. And we are all really looking forward, I think, to sharing and learning together with the OSI and with the rest of this community. So thank you. And right on time. Ooh, we're doing this in a PDF. Very nice.
I am, but I'm not skilled enough. So view, how do we get it in slideshow?
Maybe page display.
You guys are watching the ignorance here.
That work.
Nope. I'm gonna go ahead and download it again because clearly I have it in the PowerPoint because that's super easy.
Wow. Well, I'm Tegwin John.
Hi, and I'm Greg Woodring.
And we are here from Ann Arbor for Public Power, as you saw our logo on that little screen there. I guess
go ahead.
We can start without the slides.
Let's just wait, I think.
Oh, yeah, that looks awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you. So What is Ann Arbor for Public Power? Ann Arbor for Public Power is a coalition with members from many local organizations, including DSA, Sunrise Movement, Indivisible, the Climate Action Movement at U of M, Washington on 350, Ann Arbor Beyond Bernie, and many others. And we are united by our belief in a green and publicly owned future. And furthermore, we believe that these are inextricably linked. We don't think that we can build a sustainable future while building private profits for shareholders. Our goal is to democratize, decommodify, decarbonize, and decolonize our energy sources. Thank you. The problem is that DTE, our local energy provider, is not transitioning to renewables fast enough to meet global or local emissions targets. DTE uses dirty power. Most of their power comes from fossil fuels, and most of that is from coal. They're still actively investing in fossil fuel infrastructure, and according to a 2019 report, DTE is the third dirtiest major utility in the United States. And DTE and Ann Arbor have incompatible goals looking forward. The 820, if you hit the little next sign, something will pop up. The 820 carbon neutrality target date is set for 2030. That is in 9 years from now. President Joe Biden has set a target date for carbon-free electricity nationwide in 2035. However, DTE's target date for net zero emissions is in 2050. And going to the next slide, we'll see that they don't even have a plausible plan for achieving this goal. They're planning for at least 2 of their coal generators to remain in operation until 2040. They're currently constructing a $1 billion brand new fracked gas power plant in St. Clair County. Haven't ruled out building another one. And fracked gas is often advertised as a cleaner option or some sort of a transition fuel. However, depending on the amount of gas that is leaked during the production process, the amount which scientists who spend their lives studying this believe is often underestimated, fracked gas can be just as dirty as coal. So to meet that 2050 emissions reduction target, they are relying in part on technological wishful thinking and inventions that don't exist yet. They wrote that in order to achieve their 2040 target reduction date, they will rely on CO2 reduction with new innovations. But the 2030 plan, the 2030 date for the Ann Arbor 820 plan is much more finite. Our plan states that we have to power a grid by renewable energy 100% by 2030, and this simply can't be achieved under DTE's current plan.
So that brings us to why we're here tonight. We believe that the answer to this problem lies in a process called municipalization. Next slide, please. So what is municipalization? Well, in essence, it would mean transitioning from our current system of having a private energy utility to a public city-owned municipal energy utility. Now, municipal utilities are nothing new. Most people get their water or sewage through a municipal utility. In fact, municipal energy utilities are not particularly rare in the United States. More than 2,000 communities across the US get their energy from a municipal energy utility, and over 40 of those municipalities are in Michigan. Next slide, please. And that is no mistake. Municipalization is a process explicitly protected both by the Michigan State Constitution and, conveniently, by the Ann Arbor City Charter. Next slide, please. So why do we think that a municipal energy utility is the best option for Ann Arbor? Well, we know that it is both reliable and affordable, but further, it allows us local control and to invest in our community. And it allows us to be environmentally responsible and meet those goals that we know we have. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by reliability? Well, in essence, a public power utility loses power just about half as often as a private energy utility. Nationwide, a public power utility loses power for an average of about 74 minutes per year. In comparison, a private energy utility loses power for about 136 minutes per year. However, just looking at the nationwide data does not quite tell the whole story for Michigan. If you look at this graph we have, DTE on average loses over 1,000 minutes of power per year. Meanwhile, the city of Lansing, a municipal energy utility, loses just a bit over 250. That is a quarter of the downtime that a public power utility experiences in comparison to our private energy utility. Next slide, please. It is also a cheaper source of energy. On average, across the United States, public power utilities pay an average of 14% less in energy rates than their private energy utility counterparts. However, once again, the nationwide data doesn't quite tell the whole story for Ann Arbor. If you look at this graph we have, Ann Arbor's DTE energy rate is about 17.51 cents per kilowatt hours. Meanwhile, our next door neighbor of Chelsea's cents per kilowatt hour is about 10.15. That is over 40% less in their energy rates that they pay just a few miles away from us. Next slide, please. But we don't believe we should do this just because it is a cheaper, better source of power, though honestly, that's probably reason enough. We also feel that it is important that we have a local control over our energy future. With a municipal energy utility, we would control the rates, we would control the source of power, and we would control when our infrastructure is updated. Next slide, please. And furthermore, it invests in our community. Now, I can get into the jargon about how your average public power utility does give back more to their community through a system called pilot than private energy utilities give to their community through taxes. And that's true. Public power utilities pay about an average of 5.6% of their operating revenue through pilot back to their community. Meanwhile, your average investor-owned utility pays only 4.2% of their operating revenue back in taxes. But it's more than that. Through a municipal energy utility, we would create a massive investment in infrastructure in jobs in our community. And the city would have the power to ensure that those jobs are strong union jobs. We could build modern, reliable infrastructure and a resilient energy grid all on our terms. Next slide, please. And finally, and as the speakers alluded to, maybe most importantly, it is the environmentally responsible choice. Now, we know that DTE currently stands in our way of doing a lot of the things we want to do, build more rooftop solar and distributed generation. However, and DTE could waive the rates that the state the caps that the state puts on those things. However, they really have no incentive to do so. A municipal energy utility simply wouldn't have this issue. But it's more than that. Ann Arbor is a community committed to green energy, and we could say that every bit of energy generation that Ann Arbor builds would be 100% renewable, allowing us to reach that 2030 renewable energy target on our own terms without having to rely on any outside factors. Next slide, please. And this isn't a fairy tale. Municipalization is a process that has taken place across the US with success many times. In Long Island, in 1998, the city municipalized their energy utility. They now serve well over 1 million customers and reduce the city's their customers' electric utility rates by 20%. Next slide, please. It doesn't stop there, though. Winter Park, Florida, formed a public power utility in 2005. The city made so much money back in excess revenues that they were able to massively rehaul their energy infrastructure, investing in underground lines, which massively reduced their outages. Next slide, please. And finally, and probably most inspiringly, Jefferson County, Washington voted in 2008 to establish their municipal electric utility. Just like we would have to do, they bought out their local private utility and were able to transition to a 97% carbon-free electricity mix, one of the cleanest mixes in the country. Soon though, hopefully to be beaten by us at 100%. Next slide.
So what is the path that we see for Ann Arbor to join these success stories, the sustainable and fiscal ones? Well, we think that Ann Arbor is right for municipalization for a variety of reasons. For one thing, municipalization is legal, as we've touched on. The Ann Arbor City Charter and the state constitution both explicitly authorize municipalization, unlike Boulder, Colorado, which one of the previous commenters mentioned is often brought up in the conversation of municipalization in Ann Arbor. However, the Boulder fight was long and legally bloody, in part because they didn't have the kind of explicit legal language that we do. Ann Arbor already has a public utility. Our water system and our sewage are municipally operated. This is not true in many communities across the country, but it is true here, which demonstrates that our local government has the ability to provide these services to its citizens and to meet our needs. There is a strong local commitment to carbon neutrality in Ann Arbor. Both the City of Ann Arbor and the University of Michigan, our largest employer, have set very ambitious carbon neutrality targets. And perhaps most importantly, we think that Ann Arbor has the expertise and resources to make this happen, both materially and socially. Ann Arbor is one of the most highly educated cities in the country. It has demonstrated over the long term our commitment to being environmentally sound. So if we can't do this here, we can't do it anywhere, but it's happened elsewhere. So we think that we can do it here with amazing success. Next slide, please. We also believe that municipalization is in alignment with the proposed A20 energy criteria and principles. Looking at the core criteria, municipalization will allow us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through our locally controlled energy source blends and increasing local solar. Municipalization will allow us to add new electricity generation, including, as mentioned by a commenter, by perhaps incentivizing local solar or building new generation elsewhere, which we would then own as a city. It also democratizes energy access, allowing our community's values of equity and justice to influence our local energy, both in generation and distribution. Looking at energy principles, municipalization that's the most local control you can get looking at an energy system. And we all know that local control enhances resilience, whether you're talking about an energy system, a food system, or a school system. Municipalization is scalable. Cities of many sizes have utilities, and as Ann Arbor grows, our municipal utility would grow with us. And we believe that Ann Arbor can be a role model for new public energy utilities across the state of Michigan. Next slide, please. We also believe that CCA, combined community choice aggregation, and municipalization are complementary. The renewable resources identified and secured for a CCA could be distributed by a municipally owned grid. And if Ann Arbor is successful at establishing a municipal utility, we could provide power to adjacent communities. We also think, importantly, that our timeline is simply too critical to put all of our eggs in one basket when it comes to the climate crisis. CCA is not legal in Michigan, and it is not likely to become legal for at least several years. We would like to work with CCA advocates and strengthen energy democracy and access in Michigan across all its forms. Next slide, please. However, we know that this process will not be without challenges. There will be costs, stranded costs, separation and reintegration costs, transaction costs, startup costs, legal fees, and opportunity costs. However, there will be costs associated with any path that we take to change the energy landscape in our community. It will take time on the scale of years. Again, this is something that it shares with every process that we might undertake as a community to make our energy future more sustainable. We will face opposition from DTE. DTE is not going to want to give up the Ann Arbor market. However, as we have touched upon earlier, we believe that the legal basis for their argument is flimsy, and it is a case that we could win, and we will win. We know that it's been a long time since a municipality in Michigan has created a public power utility, which is all the more reason for Ann Arbor to do so. The state needs a test case. We need to break the monopoly and the stranglehold, honestly, that our large electric utilities have on the communities of the state. And we believe that the benefits will outweigh the costs. We think that not doing something on this issue will cost more in the long run. Speaking of costs, next slide, please. One of the first costs associated with this process will be a feasibility study, and we believe that this feasibility study is likely to cost about $120,000. What we get for that $120,000 will be a much better perspective on exactly how much it will cost to start up and operate a municipal utility, as well as a better understanding of the legal framework involved. So where do we come to this $120,000 estimate? Well, in 2017, Decorah, Iowa, with a population of 8,000, paid $70,000 for their feasibility study for establishing a municipal utility. The next year in 2018, Pueblo, Colorado, population 112,000, paid $122,000 for their feasibility study. And just 2 years ago, Chicago, population 2.7 million, paid $120,000 for their feasibility study. So we think that $120,000 will get us a feasibility study, which will give us a lot of the answers that we need to begin this process as a community to secure sustainable and community-controlled energy generation for us and for the people who live here for many years. And we think that we owe it to ourselves and to the future to find that information and answer these questions. Thank you very, very much. And let us know if you have any questions for us right now.
I thank you very much. That was a great presentation. I would not be surprised if we have a lot of comments and/or questions from commissioners. I'd like to open the floor. I can see all of you, so go ahead, Mark.
A couple comments. One, I wanted to clarify the first speaker on the phone, I think mixed up community choice aggregation and DTE's green power program, that a CCEA would not require Ann Arbor to buy power from DTE. Community choice aggregation builds on the electric choice program that was authorized under Republican Governor John Engler and is still in effect today. The second part of that, I guess, is the working and fighting the legislator on this. I don't find that a scary prospect. We took on the solar taxation, the City of Ann Arbor, the Michigan Municipal League, the Michigan Federation of Cities, the public schools, and numerous others were against us, and we ended up with a unanimous bipartisan vote and got solar taxation done. I think the issue is selling it to communities that don't look like Ann Arbor, and there's an awful lot of them out there that would like to do that. And there's a bunch of municipal utilities out there, including the one that I'm sitting in now in my 100% solar house in Harbor Springs, that would be more than happy to sell green power from their excess generation under a green power program, as I would think some others would as well. So I agree that the CCA and municipalization is not mutually exclusive. I would say they're synergistic, and these are two paths that we should look at. I would say that we can start Monday working with the legislature. We have two people who are very interested in this, and begin to look at how that done. The other part, I think, I remember our previous city administrator, John Mirsky, and I had a meeting with him talking about this, and I remember him commenting about how different it was to come from Austin to Ann Arbor, and how much he didn't really fully appreciate the benefit of a municipal utility. He said that they would routinely, at the end of the year, get a $80,000 to $100,000 surplus funds flowing into the city from the municipal utility that was totally unbudgeted and unplanned. There was always surplus funds and stuff. So he was rather shocked when he got here and realized that that was no longer an option for him. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify those two things. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Would people raise their hand at the bottom of the screen? I saw, I think Robert, George is the next person, and then Travis, and I think Mike also indicated that he wanted to speak. So Robert, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I just want to thank you both for jumping on and giving that presentation. I've had the privilege of speaking with a member of your coalition and hearing more about how all of this would work and the functionality behind all of it. But again, big kudos to someone not far out of college myself, that it's always great to see youth activism, especially around such a pressing issue as climate change. So thank you again for that. My question relates to Chelsea. I'm very unfamiliar with that. I know Commissioner Clevey mentioned that a second ago. I guess, to the both of you, and Commissioner Clevey, I'm sure you can jump in there too, about how Chelsea's works, and if there was anything we can take from them that would work here.
Chuck, can you speak to that? I see your hand up, or is that what you raised your hand for, or did you have a question or comment?
We also, I believe, have a couple other members of our coalition who are now involved in the call here who could give comment. Maybe Ken or Sam or another member of A2P2 might be able to comment more about Chelsea as a specific example. Robert, could you?
If they can respond, then Missy can recognize them.
They're already elevated. I think Ken just unmuted.
Yeah, thanks, Tegwin. I'm elevated because I just did some of the statistical work that showed up on the presentation slides. So I calculated Chelsea's electric rate based on its utility website, but I cannot answer Robert's question about how Chelsea works. I am not familiar with the ins and outs of their operation. So maybe Chuck is.
Yeah. Chuck, or I can too. We did a study with Chelsea like 5 years ago, looking at solar there, and the impetus there was half the city council was driving electric vehicles and they couldn't get them charged, so they wanted to do solar. Chelsea does no self-generation. They buy 100% of the power outside. They're probably more of a typical municipal utility, and that's an option for us. We could become a municipal utility, buy power, and buy green power, buy brown power, buy whatever power we want. It's the trick is, if you're going to self-generate, it's a business, and you got to be smart about it. So in Arbor, I'm not sure we'd all be happy with having gas-powered facilities in Arbor and all the stuff that's going to go with it. But this could get really easy if the University of Michigan joined with us in a municipal utility. We could this would move along very quickly, or would agree to put up some money in the lawsuit, or to pay for half the study. This could move along quite rapidly. So I would think Chelsea would be a potential customer for green power from Ann Arbor, as opposed to us looking at it the other way, because they buy their green power from DTE right now, and it's upward to $300,000 a year just to buy green credits.
So Missy indicated earlier that this is obviously a learning process, and some deeper dives on some of these topics I think would benefit all of us, because we obviously want to make a good decision and not regret what we've done 5 years down the road. We don't want to lose 5 years. Robert, did you have any other follow-up, or is that?
Yeah, I just had one other quick unrelated question on that note. To the presenters, you mentioned the potential legal concerns there. I was just thinking, I deal with a decent amount of contracting in my day job, and I was just curious, what type of contractual obligations does the city and the university you currently have? I'm just unaware of what the legal concerns there that you kind of alluded to from more of a contractual angle. Like, is there a certain amount of time that the city has committed to purchasing power from DTE that we must uphold for? Just on that lines, and it doesn't need to be super detailed. Just any quick explanation would do.
Robert, I'm going to take that one and say we need to punt that for the energy attorney to really talk about the legal ramifications.
Okay.
I think that needs to come from expertise.
Okay.
Councilmember Radina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the speakers. Also, I want to echo Robert's comments about how grateful I am for all of you to be involved and to be willing to put together a presentation and come and talk to us. This is something that I've been interested in studying a lot personally, and I've had a lot of conversations with some of my constituents and other elected officials about it. And I think, I'm a former customer actually of Lansing Board of Water and Light, and enjoyed my service there. And responsiveness of the utility to the community. I think one of the things that I have struggled with and that I really appreciate from your presentation is that, you know, Lansing Board of Water and Light established their municipal energy program in 1892. And so we don't have a recent example of what that might look like in kind of our modern times. And so I appreciate you pointing us to Long Island, Winter Park, and Jefferson County. I will continue to do my research there, but I have struggled personally to find some of those recent success stories. So to the extent that you have additional information that you could share about those 3 examples, I would be really grateful to look at that. I'm particularly interested in some of the initial startup costs and things like that. I know that a feasibility study would speak to that more closely to our kind of local situation. But you know, as I'm considering even what this might look like going forward, and looking at the fact that, you know, we also have a COVID budget system cycle that we're dealing with right now, trying to just kind of do all of that math kind of on the front end to the extent that I can as I'm weighing some of these factors. So if you have more information about that, that would be great as well. But I just also wanted to thank you again, because I really appreciate the presentation and the conversation tonight.
Thank you, Travis. Yes, certainly we can forward on more information regarding those examples. I believe that information did come from the American Association for Public Power, which has a lot of information about those types of success stories and so forth. And I appreciate that you alluded to the fact that a feasibility study would answer a lot of these questions. I think, as we've seen, there's a lot of support in the community and a lot of interest in this. It is a very feasible path forward, it seems, and it seems prudent to fully investigate that and get those answers that we need.
Commissioner Schreiberg, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. I want to echo the thanks to the presenters, who I think did an excellent job of laying out something that this commission's been talking about off and on for probably a decade or so, but this was maybe the most focused effort to bring that to bear that I've seen. My question is really around the timing, because I'll tell you, one of the hang up that I've got for this is that the time that it would take to form this, which, you know, is measured certainly in years, if not more, is time that I don't want to waste when we can be working directly on the solution. So and I realize there's a short-term, long-term thing, but I'd be curious from the presenters or others on the commission, how you balance those things, the urgency that we need to reduce emissions right now, and the time and effort in the legal fight over many years that it would take to create this. You know, I'm there in concept, but I've got a practical concern about timing.
Yeah, we share that concern. I think that that's a big part of the reason why we said that CCA and municipalization are complementary approaches. You know, we owe it to the future generations to fight this battle with every tool we have. And yes, municipalization is not a short process. It can be done in a realistic time frame that allows us to get to those energy goals that we want. But that does require urgency in the form of city cooperation. And we really hope that we'll get that type of cooperation moving forward, so that we can use every tool in our disposal to make sure that the future generations have the sustainable future that they deserve.
And I guess I'd just add, I see a concern that I have is timing, but also, you know, the limited pool of resources of city resources and time to do that. And I just think there's a balance there. Maybe I'm stating the obvious, but as you know, that, you know, time that goes into that can't go into other program time. So, and I know it's not a full zero-sum game, but there, you know, time and resources are limited within the city as well. So just a comment on that, but thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hookham and then Commissioner Kerber. Broken microphone, sorry, okay. So then we'll move on to, Commissioner Hookham, if you would like, you could potentially—
He might be good now, Chairperson. No, check your notes.
So if it's very, very short, you could put them into chat.
Please do not use the chat function. You should not be using the chat function. That is not allowed per OMA. Please do not use the chat function.
Okay.
Yes. Chuck, if you want to email me, I would gladly read them.
Okay, there we go. So we'll move to Commissioner Garber. Larry.
So, I can understand solving Ann Arbor's problem this way. And Ann Arbor is quite unique, as has been pointed out, quite unique. And not every municipality would have that same uniqueness. I tend to really want to see the idea of energy choice everywhere in Michigan, not just in Ann Arbor. And if what we do can apply additional pressure to loosen up the monopoly stranglehold, what's been referred to as the monopoly stranglehold, then I think that's a big win for Ann Arbor, for other municipalities, and for the state of Michigan, and hopefully the rest of the country. Because we're not the only state that suffers from this stranglehold. It goes on all across the country. All across the country. So having an impact here is just a step. It may be a good step, but not a complete step. We have to do bigger than that.
Thank you, Commissioner Garber. I'm going to recognize Commissioner McCoy next, and Commissioner Streiberg and Jörg, if you have other comments, leave your hand up. If not, then take your hand down. Go ahead, Ember.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think as some people know, I'm a part of the Ann Arbor for Public Power group, so it's really excited to see this conversation at the forefront here. I just wanted to explain a little bit, like the reasons that I'm excited about it are, as I think I've mentioned a couple times on the call, I think that we really need to be focusing on things not just that bring us to clean, green energy, which I think can easily be a lot of our focus, but also on things that touch on many of the things that the public comment around affordability and resilience. And that's the way that we truly center environmental equity when we're thinking about our policies. I think those things are really important elements that are not brought by all plans, but again, emphasize the importance of working together with a couple of different things. And also, as mentioned, I really appreciate, I feel like especially in Michigan, people have this sense that DT is inevitable, as I think I've mentioned before at Energy Commission meetings. And so I think, really trying to explore this and other options and pushing against the status quo is like the really big, bold moves that we need and the type of moves that Ann Arbor has a history of doing. I also wanted to address a comment that was made over email. So Robert said earlier how he appreciated how this is like a youth-driven movement, which I also really appreciate seeing young people present and the coalition of people across different ages that are a part of this group. There's a comment over email that this needs to be driven by taxpayers. And I just wanted to say that, like, to me, I read that as homeowners. So if I misinterpreted that, please correct me. But I just wanted to make a comment that renters, even though we are not the ones directly paying taxes, our rent pays taxes and then some. And I think we should really not encourage conversations that exclude a huge group of residents in Ann Arbor, in this case, the majority of residents in Ann Arbor, and especially create a conversation that's only around wealthy, white, and older people in Ann Arbor. So I really think it's important that this conversation was with everyone who will be a voter, and I'm encouraged to see that here today.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thank you. Mostly just a comment for me. Just wanted to say thank you for this outstanding presentation. I appreciated the background, the acknowledgement of the challenges within any framework that we move forward with, and also just sort of practical, what are the next steps. So it's a really good piece. Also, many thanks to all the commenters that called in to share their thoughts as well. And I'm looking forward to sort of the series of educational pieces that are coming forward, so that we can kind of put this in the context of hearing from some legal advice next, and just I also appreciate the the comments around not putting all of our eggs in one basket. I think that's really important. What we need to make sure that we're exploring a lot of different options and that we get to a successful outcome for our community. And as Amber mentioned, for everybody in our community.
Other commissioners, Commissioner Clevey.
I just want to pick up on what Mike was saying, and it's the question of the cost of this. Would these $120,000 be borne by the Office of Sustainability and Innovation's budget, or because we have a water utility, is this something that would be done under their budget and under their responsibility, or some other part of the city? I mean, how trying to figure out how this would happen. Dropping $120,000 in Missy's budget right now, I think that people's eyebrows would go up. But we do have a water utility, and I wonder, is that an option? Is that part of the conversation, I guess?
As far as I know, someone from the group want to comment? I don't know if there's a source really identified. I'm aware of the municipalization effort in Decorah, Iowa, and my understanding is that was essentially privately funded, primarily by a local philanthropist. Is there any idea from within the A2P2 group as to what the source of those funds would be, or a proposal where they should come from?
We have not made a budget right now with how to raise $120,000 ourselves. I think that we as an organization recognize that there's a lot of private money in this community. And if in order to access that money to pay for this, it would need to be funneled through our group. That's something that we are open to. And I think we're investigating right now those sorts of legal frameworks that we would need as an organization in order to engage in fundraising. I also am curious, and I think a lot of people in this group are, about how to potentially access some of the general funds in this city, like the kinds of funds that went to like buying new electric Ford Mustangs for our police force, for example. Very cool. But I think that as a community, I think that some of the values that our community holds would be open to some of the like general funds of the city being used for a feasibility study like this. I don't think that we are interested in all of this coming out of the very important work that the Office of Sustainability has already budgeted it for. So I think that there are a lot of questions to be pursued there. And if anyone on this call has information or ideas about that, please reach out to us.
Great. Other commissioners, questions, comments? Anyone? Yes, Carlene.
I would welcome information about the process for the feasibility study. How does it get kicked off? First, plunk down the cash, and then what happens? Or like, what's the process? And that would be really informative if you could share that with us.
Yeah, so as you saw in that slide that referenced the feasibility studies that have been done elsewhere, there are organizations that do these types of things. In fact, two of the most recent feasibility studies were done by an organization called NewGen. I'm not an expert on city process, so maybe someone else could step in more on that, but I imagine the process would probably be some sort of bidding process where those types of organizations would make an offer and the city would accept one of them.
I'll just comment, if indeed the city were to take a lead in this, then that would be exactly right. I mean, if it would to be through private fundraising, through Ann Arbor Public Power, then you could decide how that would be, whether you issue a request for proposal and then evaluate those, or whether you just short circuit the whole process time-wise. I mean, that would be something that would be probably up to you guys. So that, that remains open.
Well, my recommendation would be to provide as much structure to this as possible, because just the RFP process is an entire process in and of itself to understand what questions to ask and in order to get bids for. So I would advise, you know, to do that kind of research ahead of time, which would serve the city and city council as far as making it more easy to make decisions. And this is part of what we went through for having the approval of the electric vehicle readiness ordinance. There's a tremendous amount of work that went into it ahead of time.
Anyone else?
Clarifying question.
Yes. Commissioner Hesher.
I was just going to second that discussion on request for proposal process. If it's a privately funded request for proposal that someone or a group would bring into a public entity and say, this is how or you would municipalize something, the rigor that's done on competitive bidding analysis and RFP analysis, and the questions that need to be asked, make sure you have experts in the fields of electricity and others so that you do ask the best, quote, right questions so that you get the information that you really need so that you get a feasible cost. Because if you do not get the costs right up front or the feasibility up front, you could take the city down a path that would not be wise. You know, so if you take, say, the Washington municipality and the fact that they're 97% renewable right away, you have to understand that the major source of electricity in that area is from hydroelectric generation. And so you have a very natural, abundant, renewable energy source there. So you want to look at other municipalities that have been formed in areas like ours with similar infrastructure, like ours, with similar diversity of supply, right? So make sure that you're looking at those and make sure that if you would happen to get private funding, that you do a rigorous RFP process as if you were doing it from the actual city of Ann Arbor and understand and follow that type of process. So there's a lot of technical details in here that are even outside of the realm of legal, politics, everything else, because you have to set up your own utility. You have to staff your utility. You have to understand the technical requirements of owning and maintaining an electric distribution system. And that's even before you start deciding whether or not you're going to add your own generation within the city of Ann Arbor, if you're going to buy generation from outside the city, lots of things. So Mark's just back there like nodding. So I know this is a very daunting task. And so you can't look at the elephant. You have to think about taking this in chunks and bites. And you also have to set up a project plan with exit ramps off when you may have and what criteria you're going to use to make those decisions. Like, is this the best right use of Ann Arbor's resources and talent? You know, to Commissioner Garber and Commissioner Cleavy's points, you know, is it better served for us to look more in the policy realm to get more of a global change in the state of Michigan? Or do we continue just to, you know, focus our energies on just the city of Ann Arbor? So those are my preliminary thoughts, but thank you very much for your time and your research. You know, the publicpower.org and Institute for Local Self-Reliance are also places where there's a lot of information on municipalization. So it's very trendy right now in the country. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Missy, were you able to get any comments or questions from Commissioner Hookham?
I haven't yet. No.
Okay.
Chuck, do you want to try your microphone one more time? I see you working. No go.
Too bad.
Hey, call in on a phone.
So I think, do we have anybody else? So I'm going to offer some very few comments from my side. First of all, I think this is a beginning of a really great conversation where I think we can learn from each other. And I think a lot of the guidance that came out of this was hopefully very helpful to the group. And I can see that, you know, conversations outside of this forum are also going to help inform us, and I encourage those to take place. I just want to point out a few things that haven't been brought up. So on, like, I think slide number 3, talking about DTE's energy resource split, pump hydro is shown as 9%, but pump hydro really isn't, if you think about it, an energy source. It's a battery. In a sense, it is an energy resource, but the energy that is disposed through pump hydro is coming from some other source. So you want to take that out of there and show what that is without pump hydro. You know, the general picture doesn't change, but just to get that right. Yeah, I think I can skip my other comments. There were a lot of really good comments, and like I said, I really encourage all of you and all of us to continue this discussion. And as Missy has pointed out, we're looking forward to the presentation next month, as well as potential other presentations. It could be that we look at CCA. It could be that we have DTE come in here and talk about what they plan to contribute to the A20 plan, so on and so forth. So there's lots of options open to us over the next couple of months. So,
Chair Mirsky, I think Commissioner Hookham might be unmuted. I heard a ding from his computer. No.
No.
He did light up though. He did, right? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Chuck, we did call in on the phone, Chuck.
Yeah. We didn't sabotage you on purpose, Chuck. Okay, so it's approaching 8 o'clock, and I realize that many of you have other commitments this evening, and we have some other interesting things going forward. So I'm going to bring this agenda point to a close. Again, thank everybody. And the next topic is Energy Commission meeting topics. And there's been some communication on that already, so hopefully we don't have to spend too long. Missy, do you want to take the lead on that?
Yeah, and forgive me here, I'm just moving people around in the space. So Chair Mirsky, apologies, are we on policy or are we on topics?
According to the agenda, Energy Commission meeting topics is necessary.
Great. Excellent. I'm going to, I'll share my screen for you all, but as the preface for this, as we started, we are really excited about the ideas that commissioners have kind of talked about for a while. And we've had really great presenters come in and talk about a topic here or a topic there. And I think I shared with you at a previous commission meeting, one of the things that I really want to work on from the staff perspective is creating an educational series. And Chuck took us through some beginning of the kind of understanding the grid and how it functions. And so there's some technical things about how our energy system operates. And then there are, of course, questions about the levers we have. What policies should or could we explore? What technologies, how viable is geothermal in our region? What kind of geothermal? What's the role of distributed generation? How about virtual power storage agreements? How about virtual power reduction agreements? Like there's all kinds of things, right? And we talk about them a lot in OSI, and we talk about them a lot in our professional circles, and you talk about them a lot as well. And we know we have really strong community support for some of these ideas, but what we don't think we've done a very good job in, at least from the sustainability office side, is paint the ecosystem and let folks know there's actually a lot of things that we can explore. And there are some things that we can't yet, but we could. And so we want to understand sort of where our foundational laws and legislation is, where there's room to move, where there might have to be change, and then what levers, again, we could pull. So we went back through some of the previous commission meetings, and then we had a meeting with the chair and co-chair, and we just started to dump ideas in. What are things that we've heard? And so what you've got before you is a list of topics, and I will share my screen if that's okay with everybody to show the list. And I think I'll leave it to your discretion, Chair Mirsky, on how you want this conversation to go. I think we could quickly see if anyone has any ideas. I believe what we had talked about was I can take suggestions. You can send them over to me after. And then at the next commission meeting, we might actually vote on the topics in priority order for you. So this is hard to see. Let me blow this up. I will not walk through all of these, but I'll just pull out some kind of exciting ones. They're in alphabetical order. There's no prioritization, I promise. So we broadly thought about financing, and Jay is really interested in offering a lot of excitement around the concept of like how we finance the space. We're doing a lot on beneficial electrification. I've heard talk in the last meeting about the green belt, so I've already reached out to the green belt coordinator to come and talk about the intersection of green belt acquisitions with renewable energy generation. As I mentioned, we've got our energy attorney who is going to come and talk about legislation, but there's others, right? How the grid works 201. So can we give Commissioner Hookham more time and some others to really talk about the system itself and how power moves. I mentioned some of these fun things at the end. We've got power purchase agreements, which for us often look like most tangibly things like, I just totally drew a blank on the solar and houses of worship, Solar Faithful.
Solar
There it
Faithful,
is.
yes.
Thank you. Is a version of a power purchase agreement, but there are other mechanisms that we can use. On-site, the city released its I forgot to share that. We released our RFP for on-site solar 2 weeks ago for about 1.2 megawatts of rooftop solar in Ann Arbor. Very exciting. We're working on a parallel for the housing commissions, but that's a different, right? That is a behind the meter generation. What about something like community solar? So we've got lots of topics. Some of these things are things that have not been done yet here. Some of these are emerging, like a virtual power reduction agreement is something we believe we are only one of 4 states that are enabled to do. So I've asked the energy attorney to talk a little bit about why this is something we think we could do and what that would look like. And some of you may have seen a large corporation that has a goal of being carbon neutral has moved past kind of a commitment to offsetting their emissions and investments in renewables to actually doing a management of load profile. So they're bringing in storage to help manage load. So when they're actually pulling from the grid, they know they're generating at that same time. And they had to do that through a virtual power storage agreement. So there's a lot of things that are here. I'm going to stop talking and see if any commissioners are really excited about a topic that is not listed, that they just want to name.
But before we do that, I'm going to step in. So I'm going to open things back up, but I'm going to open things up with the following comments for your consideration. And that is, we had a little bit of communication, like Missy mentioned, OSI and Carlene and I, about how to handle this. And our thought was at one time, well, we're going to try to do some kind of force ranking tonight. And we decided that's probably not a very efficient way of doing it. And there may be other ideas that people provide tonight, or if in looking at this, you come up with other ideas, then we'd like to have you submit those. So what we would propose to do is if anybody has anything that they want to say tonight that's really important, then we would recognize that. But the intention is to give this as essentially a homework assignment, that everybody review this, finalize the list, then give you some time to do some kind of force ranking. We'll provide some kind of process to do that so that when we come back for our next meeting, we have at least an initial force ranking. And I don't think it's necessarily important that we rank, the top A through U or whatever the list is that we first get the first 5 or so and we plan around those. And then if there's some new things that emerge, then we can also review the force ranking going forward. So if that's okay with everybody, I would open up the floor for a few minutes and then hopefully we can move on. So anybody have any comments they want to make right now? Commissioner Hookham. Still don't hear you.
Chuck, can you give me the last 3 digits of your phone number? No, there's no way you can because you can't talk. Let me see if I have your phone number really quick because I think I need to elevate your phone. If you want to go on, I might not be great at
Press
capturing your
*9
foot.
on the phone. He would raise his hand, maybe, right?
Yes. I think I have him. So I'm just.
So
Oh, I got you. Hold on. Okay.
Commissioner McCoy, do you want to go first while they're figuring that out, and then we'll circle back to Commissioner Hookham?
Too much technology, but
Oh,
go
there
ahead.
we go.
I'll
We hear you,
step in.
Jeff. Go ahead.
I apologize. I got two computers and a phone, and I can't connect, so I apologize for that. And I'll just say, you know, I could talk a lot. I think you've heard me talk a lot. I'm experienced in a lot of the buckets, a lot of the items on the list right now. And let's just say it this way: my largest customer is MPPA, Michigan Public Power Agency, and I've worked with all the munis. I think Chelsea, on down, Holland, Lansing, you name it, we've worked with them. I can talk a lot about history of working with them, what their thought processes are, where they're headed, renewables, the whole gamut. I can talk a lot about CCAs. I worked out in California. I guess it's one of those things, where do we start, right? And what's going to be the biggest dent going forward? Obviously, the thing that comes to mind right out of my mind is energy efficiency. We can all do that today. No rules, no laws, no policy. We can do it right now and make a big difference. So some of these others have different benefits and costs. I can bring a lot of that to the table. And I'll just stop there. I mean, this is a great start. I think a lot of people have said it already. Let's look at the alternatives. Let's lay it all out. I think we need to be cognizant of economics, technology, and time. They all have constraints. What do we need to break those constraints? How do we move forward in a pathway that makes sense? But let's do it pragmatically. Let's not do it out of passion. Let's do it out of a well-studied process going forward. Somebody made the point that we're an educated community. Let's use that educated body of knowledge and make this look like a semblance that has success to it. And we have to define what success is. And that's really critical too. So I'll just stop there and we'll go forward.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy, then Commissioner Hatcher, then Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, this is a little different than some of the things that are proposed, but I think it would be helpful for everyone to hear a presentation just around energy justice and energy democracy. I'm thinking like either organizers, like the energy democracy organizers for the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition, or maybe having U of M's Dr. Tony Reams talk a little bit about energy efficiency and the intersection of justice. But I just think it's something we talk a lot about, but not everyone might not know about, and we have a lot of expertise very close to home.
Thank you. Teresa.
Hi, yeah. In the Grid 201 section, there's nothing in here about distributed energy resources. And so the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission had put an order out in 2020 for Order 2222, which requires RTOs to build tariffs that allow distributed energy resource aggregation and then that access to the wholesale markets, right? And so we're in the midst of figuring out what that means, but when we talk about distributed energy resources, not necessarily generation resources, because batteries are not generators, they're seeds. But something on that DER topic, DER aggregation in that Grid 201 series would probably be helpful, because there may be opportunities depending on how the DER aggregation plays out over the next couple of years.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. So in terms of kind of what I'd love to see coming next, it sounds like it's Valerie Brader who's coming next month, is that right? And talking a little more extensively about sort of municipalization, but also kind of the legal framework, legal considerations. I guess I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what she's going to be talking about, but I think it would be helpful for our community based on all of the calls that we got today. And maybe forgive me if this has already happened in Energy Commission before I joined on, but obviously the carbon neutrality plan that was adopted by council last year had sort of a framework of community choice kind of is our strategy moving forward. And I think really explicitly having a conversation around that and some of the trade-offs of how where that feedback came from, what led to that decision to include that sort of framework within our plan, because we're obviously hearing a lot from the community about sort of either having a dual strategy or another strategy. And I guess I'd love to see us very more quickly diving into that conversation and really building strong understanding for myself, but also for others in the community about why our current plan lays a certain path in front of us.
We still have some hands up, but those may be holdovers, except we see Commissioner Clevey, I think yours is new. You're muted still, Mark. There you go.
Energy Grid 201. I think, we have an opportunity. We have an awful lot of hydropower just sitting in mothballs. I know Chuck has raised this issue a number of times, but perhaps under the Energy Grid 201, we could have whatever the latest thinking is on hydropower in Ann Arbor, if it's viable, add that in. And certainly if we're going to look at municipalization or CCA, it seems like our hydropower capabilities should at least be considered.
If it's okay with you, Commissioner Clevey, I'm going to propose that as a separate topic that fits elsewhere, and looking at the city actually does generate quite a bit of hydropower. And so I think that warrants its own discussion with the experts in that space.
And the other one is the 2030 district. Seems that behind the meter solar and 2030 district is the logical place. We've got an awful lot of commercial operations. And again, whatever path we choose to go down, this is going to be well beyond just residential power and municipal buildings and figuring out how to do this. We could do behind the meter commercial power now. Just how to do it, get somebody to move on it.
Anyone else? I think what we see here is a lot of material to cover, a lot of learning cycles. But obviously, we have a sense of urgency. We need to have a sense of urgency that was made abundantly clear by the callers. And so we need to also have a lot of action cycles. Again, as I mentioned, Missy, we'll figure out how to get something out. This document, maybe we can have a call in the next couple of days. We welcome additions. One that I might throw out there is that we anticipate getting a carbon neutrality plan from the University of Michigan sometime around the end of this month. And so what is the intersection and interdependencies between what we do and what they do? And we don't know that yet, but we will know that hopefully here in the next month or two. So that's another thing we can talk about, collaboration, exactly. So take a look at this. We'll get this back out to you. We welcome your comments on new topics, maybe how to bundle these, and then maybe we'll figure out a way to also have you force rank these. Very good. Good. It's been a really great meeting. I really appreciate everybody. It's been great from the public as well as from all of you. I'm really encouraged by this meeting. So Missy, I'm missing it on my agenda, but I know we wanted to talk about it, and that was on policy aspects. I don't see it on the agenda, but I think you're able to talk about it, correct?
I am, and I have updated the agenda on Legistar, although you're not going to see this updated file because I honestly got recommendations.
Very good. I printed it out about 24 hours ago or so.
No, that's fair. So the way this is going to have to, well, first let me say I'm not sure how this fell through the cracks. That was Freudian. The cracks. We went back and looked, and we didn't see any correspondence. So I'm sorry this is coming a little 11:59th hour. Basically, what happens, for those who may not have noticed or seen previous emails, the commissions get asked, as do staff, for recommendations of policy. that often it's state policy, at least for the last 4 years, it's been state policy. Now it is also federal policy that we want to see promoted or enhanced or changed, very candidly, if necessary. And the various commissions kind of bring some ideas forward. They can be voted on by the commission. They often aren't. They're just kind of ideas. They then get put together with all of the commissions across the city, staff add, and then they go to the council policy committee for review and prioritization. And then council, that committee themselves will determine what the top priorities are. They will then go to our lobbyists to support and push for. So of course, the Energy Commission is really, really important. The good news is we as staff are laser focused on energy. So we had a lot of the ideas kind of already present, but what I've got before you is an updated memo, and I will happily circulate this to folks. The problem is we have until Thursday to finish it, which means I have to finish it Thursday. So I'd have to get comments back for you pretty much tomorrow morning to make this work. So I've taken all the comments I've received from people and organized them. So thank you so much to the commissioners who've shared. This is wide-ranging concepts. I think we ended up with 27 ideas that we have, everything ranging from supporting the types of legislation we talked about today, to changing our tax incentive, the ITC, the tax credit, to being a rebate, right? So more people can access because they don't have to have a tax appetite and or they don't have to have the upfront capital to make these investments, to adding the state itself having its own additional tax rebate. So we're continuing to lower the costs. And then there are things that came out from the EV landscape, really critical here, things about parity with registration fees, allowing direct sales to customers per the Motor Vehicle Franchise Act. And so there's a lot here. What I wanted to do, what I would love to know is if anyone has something that they're like chewing on that they didn't get a chance to share, and this is your moment to name it. And if no one does, I'll send this out immediately after the meeting so folks can then just write back to me.
Anybody have anything to throw out real quickly?
I had just sent a meeting or an email to you like pretty last minute, Missy. So I just wanted to confirm that you got it.
Yeah, I definitely have that. Ember, yours is the only one that's not fully in here yet, but like I put placeholders for it. So I'll get that in before I circulate it to everyone.
Okay,
very good. Missy, I'm going to throw one out that just came up in the webinar that I participated in earlier today. I don't believe it's on the list, and that is third-party demand response bundling. So in the state of Michigan, utilities are the only entities able to do that. And in other states, there are third parties that are able to do it. I don't know how much benefit that brings in terms of innovation and things like that. I mean, the basic policy is there, but whether the third party brings a benefit, that's something to at least look into. Commissioner George and Councilman Briggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. As I'm still somewhat new to the commission, historically, maybe this is a question to you, Mr. Chairman, or Missy. What is the commission's stance and the city's lobbying position on nuclear, Ben, on nuclear power?
The commission took a vote on that several years ago. And my recollection is, I was new on the commission at the time, was that we were opposed to at least certainly new nuclear power. I don't remember. Commissioner Clevey, do you remember if we took a position on existing nuclear power? I don't know if.
Sorry. Yeah.
Mark?
Our position was that we encourage the city to just support relicensing of Fermi 2 because they were going to do a bunch of expansion there, and through a bunch of efficiencies, they were actually able to increase the power output there, and that that we were in support of them looking at bringing Fermi 3 online at some point in the future, because they're one of the 6 utilities in the nation, I think, that actually has been authorized to, Chuck could probably do this better, but 6 utilities in the nation that have been licensed by FERC to do a new nuclear power plant, but they don't have any plans to do so. If you remember, the DTE said that they really appreciated our support, but they just as soon not acknowledge it because they didn't want to. This was such sort of a slam dunk relicensing, so they thank you very much, but they didn't accept our support for their idea. But I would encourage anybody who's interested in this to go take the tour out there. It's very interesting going to Fermi 2 and looking at and seeing what goes on out there. It is the largest source of renewable energy in the state, and it's just been relicensed.
John, can I add to Mark?
Yeah, go ahead, please, Chuck.
So thanks for the compliment, Mark. I designed and built Fermi amongst 1,000 other engineers. So thank you for that. So Fermi 2 is relicensed. Its license was extended to 2040-ish. Fermi 3 was a license approved by the NRC, but the boiling water reactor that was configured for that project never made it through NRC. So it's pretty much parked right now. It's still a viable license that could be acted upon, but it's going to take a fair amount of time to bring back. Unfortunately, what we're seeing are other nuclear plants in the states expiring in their licenses. And so we're going to lose nuclear power. That was part of my presentation last week. But I'd be happy to talk more about what we did in the past and what we could do going forward, Robert.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I know that in the rush to try to get to as green as possible, as quickly as possible, and looking at what's happened in Japan and Germany with the closure of the nuclear plants there with replacement with coal, I was just curious what we were doing locally or like what our local position was. So I don't want to get in a prolonged discussion. Obviously, it's late, but I was just curious on that if nuclear was at all mentioned, Missy, in that document that you.
We can dig up that old resolution and send it around. Just one comment, if I may, while I have the floor, and then Councilmember Briggs, and then Missy Stoltz wants to speak too. Again, I think I would encourage all of us to also can do lifelong learning outside of commission meetings. I had an email exchange with another commissioner earlier this week about resources, and we traded resources. There's a lot of just tremendous material, on YouTube, on podcasts, blogs, etc. And I really encourage you to look up some of those topics. If you have something that you're particularly interested in, you can email me or Missy, and we can trade resources. But I want to encourage people to do that outside the context of these meetings, because sometimes there's just too much to cover in the meetings. So, Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to give a little bit more background about the policy committee, which Councilmember Redana and I both serve on. I was surprised, I guess, that there actually wasn't more prioritization on the list, because it's a really long list of policy priorities for the city. And our lobbyist obviously we paid for a very limited time with our lobbyist, and that's actually one of the things that we're planning, maybe not planning, it's being presented as an option of where we might cut our budget this year for COVID as well. So it's potential that we might scale back a lot more. My understanding in terms of how staff uses it is more of an opportunity that if something arises, it provides a little bit of freedom to be able to jump in on an issue that might become current as well. So I guess a longer list is not necessarily bad. I guess I would just ask Dr. Stoltz especially to maybe take a look at what our long list is and make sure that there's not anything on there that's been sitting around for a long time that maybe shouldn't be there anymore, or is contradictory in any sort of way with our goals. I haven't looked through that lens, and you'd be able to do it a lot more effectively. And if there is, then certainly let us know so that we could serve in that. And then obviously remember that we are serving in that committee, so we are happy to keep pushing as much as we can for our limited lobbying power to focus on certain issues.
I have a question, Commissioner. If the lobbying budget is cut, I know the Office of Sustainability Innovation has testified in partnership with GLREA on a number of things in Lansing and stuff. Would that curtail? No, it wouldn't. Okay. So
No, it's more just kind of how our external contract with a certain firm. Yeah.
Well, I would think on renewables, if that happens, there's a number of organizations. I can't speak for the Ecology Center, but I certainly can speak for GLREA that, you know, we'd be happy to step up and help out even on renewable energy things. And we work closely with the office now. So, you know, if that happens, then, you know, I can see 5 organizations represented on here who lobby, and perhaps we should all get together and see what we can do to slack.
Missy, and then Carlene.
Yeah, just procedurally to let folks know, the way that we are thinking about bringing these recommendations forward, since we won't have a formal vote of the body, is it'll come through OSI. So we will do that prioritization and that ranking based on that's for the policies. The good news is, having worked on it a lot today, I can tell you we don't have a lot of conflict, but there are things that are low-hanging fruit. There are things that are more complicated, so we'll need to strategize a bit. So I promise to do that. And then I wanted to share, Chair Mirsky, to your point about lifelong learning, the intent really, this is the previous agenda item for me, but the intent with the training series is I hope we actually turn them into short, pithy videos that go on a website for people to be able to access. And so we're kind of, in some ways, this body with OSI staff get to do a deeper dive, but the intent really is that we make these much more digestible nuggets that sort of live for our community to access. So I just wanted to name that we're hoping to really build a training infrastructure, if you will, for new commissioners, for our residents and others to get up to speed and stay up to speed, because the landscape's moving fast.
If I can riff on that real quickly, one thing we might consider doing, Missy, is when we're going to consider a topic, indicate as pre-study, if people are able and interested, look at these 1 or 2 resources, and then we're going to take the topic and we're going to look at it particularly from an Ann Arbor perspective. So if you want to look at it generally, there's going to be a lot of general resources in the public domain, but then, you know, whatever that topic is, what is of particular interest in terms of Ann Arbor and its circumstances and the policy situation in Michigan and so on and so forth. So maybe we can sort of pair those up and provide resources for people to look at outside of these meetings. Carlene.
To double piggyback on Missy and you, John, it would be really convenient for us to have a shared document that we can post our resources, you know, and share with the commission members the like reliable and verifiable information for each upcoming discussion topic for our meetings or anything else. And being that we are such an educated community, we're very capable of organizing them in a very logical fashion to share.
Great idea. Missy, did we need to talk anything else about policy? Okay,
just
so
send any other ideas out.
Okay, so we can go on to the last big chunk, but hopefully we can keep this brief. We have committee updates. I don't think all of these committees are up and running, so I'm just going to recognize people who raise their hand who want to give a committee update. How about if we handle it that way? I think we're all either tired of talking and listening or whatever, but I think we had covered a lot of great material, so we don't need to cover anymore. So what that leaves us with then is the second public comment period. And I'm going to read the directions again. Sorry for having to hit the replay on this. But again, this is an opportunity for people to speak for up to 3 minutes. If you're watching on CTN, call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247. Enter the meeting number 913-5783-4502. This information is on the agenda. It's on the video feed as well. And staff will recognize you one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. And in order to electronically raise your hand, press *9, and Missy then will see that and we will recognize you Please state your name and your address at the beginning of your comments. Might have a little bit of a delay, not too much.
And yeah, Chair Mirsky.
Okay, what I'm going to do is, Missy, if you can continue to monitor that, that would be great. And then I'd like to open it up for items for the next agenda. I think in a sense we've already covered that, but if it's not in the realm of the topics that we've discussed, I'd like to recognize anybody that wants to throw an idea out. Anybody have anything that they'd like us to consider?
Chair Mirsky, you do have one person in public comment.
Oh, I do. Okay, great. You want to recognize them?
Last three digits, 627.
Hello, can you all hear me?
We can.
Hi, I'm Connor Davidson. I'm a resident of Ann Arbor in Ward 5. I'm calling to speak in favor of energy municipalization. I've been living in Ann Arbor for about 10 years now and paying DTE directly or indirectly the entire time. As some of the people who called in at the beginning and as the presenters mentioned, DTE is more fossil fuel dependent than other utilities and across the nation and has no near-term goals to change that. We're in a historical moment where we don't have any time to waste burning carbon, and it is appalling to me as a resident of the city that we are spending our money to give it to a corporation who is working against our own goals as a city who, who passed the 820 plan and have a lot of goals around the natural environment. And DTE is using their profits to promote fossil fuel consumption and lobby against decarbonization. And just as an example of what DTE is using their money for, the Detroit Metro Times investigation in 2019 found that every customer bill from DTE is inflated by about $13 a month just to fulfill their investor obligations. That's money that all of us in Ann Arbor are spending that we could be using to install solar, wind power, or repairing the Barton Dam. But instead, that's going to someone who probably lives outside the community. They're doing all this, but we don't have a choice in it. If we adopted a municipal utility, we'd be able to control where that money is going and do things that align with what we want to do as a city with the 820 plan. And I fully support municipalization, and I hope you do as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else, Missy?
Yep, caller 215.
Okay. Caller 215.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. My name is Matt Sweeney. I am a graduate student here at U of M, and I've been in Ann Arbor for quite a long time. I was here for undergrad as well, so I've been an Ann Arbor resident for about 8 years now. And I, like so many others tonight, I'm just calling to speak in favor of the call for a study on municipalization. An enormous amount of really great points have already been made, and I don't know that I have anything more that's very unique to add. But I did want to say that the presentation that A2 Public Power gave tonight was really, really, I found incredibly effective and really robust and convincing. And I mean, especially in demonstrating that, super effectively, I think that DTE's goals are just totally not aligned with what Ann Arbor is, supposedly committed to. I also wanted to note, just like listening to the public comments earlier, was pretty remarkable, and I hope you all take seriously the support from state representatiatives, Irwin and Robbie. They're, the way I see that at least is they're trying to do what they can to make this politically safe, as politically safe as possible for you. And I think it's really important to recognize that you have those champions at the state level. So I just wanted to, sort of re-emphasize what they were saying. And I think one last point that I wanted to make in response to one of the commissioner's question earlier about, making sure that this can get done in a reasonable time frame. municipalization does indeed take a while, but we know for a fact that DTE is not doing this on a reasonable time frame. So that seems like moot point to me. You know, if we're sticking with DTE, we are assured to not be doing it on a reasonable time frame. Yeah, and I think just lastly, you know, this is an enormous win. It would be an enormous win for energy democracy, and I think that is really critical for you know, fighting climate change in the coming years. And so I hope you take it seriously. Thank you.
We thank you. Anyone else, Missy?
Yeah, caller with the last extension 245.
Hello, did you?
Yes, we hear you.
I hear that someone else is still speaking, is that right?
No, there is some background noise, but go ahead. We hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, good evening, members of the Energy Commission and Chair John Mursky. I am Kathleen Murphy. I live at 315 Linda Vista Street in Ann Arbor. That's Ward 5. And I work with Ann Arbor Indivisible. And recently I've been following the work of Ann Arbor for Public Power. I'm a committed environmentalist, worried very much about the future of the planet and the fate of all living things. I have been tremendously inspired by Ann Arbor's commitment to carbon neutrality by 2030, as well as the very impressive work of the A20 project. I became intrigued with the concept of municipalization when I learned about those cities in Michigan and around the country that had tried it. I wondered how this concept could be helpful to the city or to the A20 project to reach their goals more efficiently. Municipalization is a concept that seems oriented toward the future. It combines a full commitment to clean energy with the empowerment of the Ann Arbor public to own and control their own electrical grid. Thus, it seems to offer an additional pathway for achieving Ann Arbor's and A20's carbon neutrality goal by 2030. Yet, municipalization of our energy grid poses many challenges that need further study. Many of those have come out tonight. The Ann Arbor for Public Power group seems willing to take on that study. I was excited to see their presentation here tonight, and I hope that you, energy commissioners, were also. Now that the Biden-Harris administration is trying to aggressively deal with the climate crisis, the political environment for meeting the climate crisis head-on is improving. It's possible that municipalization might find additional support in this new political environment. So I join with those who have spoken up earlier from municipalization to encourage you, energy commissioners, to seriously explore the possibility of a municipal electric utility in Ann Arbor. Thank you very much.
That's all the public speakers, Chairman.
Is that it? I would just like to respond and say we are inspired by all the speakers tonight. I mean, we really appreciate it. And I'd like to remind everybody that when we started first talking about a carbon neutrality plan for Ann Arbor, the date was 2040. And then there was a lot of input and it moved up to 2035. And then when it was voted on by council, it was moved up to 2030. So this whole process of engagement and passion and reason and everything is a good mix. And I think the fact that we had all these voices tonight was really important, and we're going to look forward to a lot of other voices on related topics here in the coming months, and hopefully that will enable all of us to plot a reasonable plan going forward and make good choices that we can really enact quickly. So I want to thank again all of the commissioners' comments, as well as all the people that called in today. It was a great meeting, I think. So I truncated the discussion, although I don't know it needs to be carried on much longer. Agenda items for the next meeting. Any new ideas? Gone. So it is now 8:39 p.m. and I adjourn this meeting. Thanks everybody tonight for your commitment to this topic and these topics, and I look forward to our meeting next month.